The first time Marin Pine heard the phrase, "We do not negotiate with junior analysts," she almost laughed. It sounded like a line stolen from a budget action movie, yet Sylvia from Employee Relations delivered it with the solemnity of a royal decree. This happened moments after Marin placed a meticulously prepared 12-page performance proposal on Sylvia's desk, detailing every infrastructure flaw she had corrected, every client fire she had put out, and every outdated tool she had resuscitated through sheer spite and caffeine. Sylvia gave her that slow, pitying head tilt, a gesture that suggested she was listening for the faint crunch of Marin's spirit. Marin met that gaze with perfectly steady eyes. She nodded, slow and controlled, the way someone nods before closing a loaded briefcase. But the story did not start in that beige interrogation room they called Employee Relations. It began 1 week earlier, in a break room that smelled like singed oatmeal packets and defeat. Marin was hunched over a flickering workstation, manually repairing a data ingest process that should have been automated during the previous presidency. The company, Brightspire Logistics Tech, loved to brag about innovation, but half of their back-end systems were old enough to vote. The integrations team treated maintenance like a campfire story, something spoken about but never actually performed. Scripts failed silently for months. Databases cried out in deprecated languages. And yet, each time a critical failure occurred, leadership sent Marin a cheerful request to please resolve this at your earliest convenience. Marin stayed late every night that week. She reconfigured permission hierarchies by hand, rebuilt a vendor credential sequence from memory, and discovered a reporting loop that had been hemorrhaging funds at a rate that would make an accountant faint. Meanwhile, her manager, Lionel Gates, a man who once asked her how to attach a file to an email chain he had received, spent his days curating motivational posters for the office messaging channels. So when she stood before Sylvia with hard evidence of her value, she was not seeking praise or glory. She was seeking fairness, respect, compensation that matched the hours she poured into a system held together with digital chewing gum. Instead, she was called Sweetheart. That evening, Marin left the office in silence, face neutral, knuckles pale. Sylvia's parting remark echoed behind her like a cheap ringtone. "We truly value your dedication. We simply must maintain equity within the team." Equity, Marin thought, while the rest of the team panicked any time she took a personal day and 3 vendor dashboards collapsed like frightened, fainting goats. She went home, brewed a cup of stale chamomile tea, opened her personal laptop, and logged into her professional networking profile for the first time in half a year. She did not update anything. She simply scrolled through every partner firm, every vendor contact, every liaison who had ever seen her name attached to a solution. 2 days later, a message appeared. "Your name surfaced during our internal review. You corrected our routing module last quarter, correct?" It was from Ezra Hall, Senior Systems Coordinator at Meridian Core Distribution, a major client, and the first domino. Marin accepted Ezra's invitation for an informal discussion, scheduling it during a day of paid time off that Lionel barely noticed. He only asked if she would be available later to fix a dashboard that displayed alarming red bars. When she told him she would not, he shrugged and resumed posing with the office's novelty productivity bell. Meridian Core's headquarters looked like a temple built by people who worshipped spotless data and citrus-scented air. Ezra greeted her with a firm handshake and guided her to a glass-walled conference room stocked with beverages that were not brewed from despair and powdered residue. He explained their growing concerns. Their transaction validator had failed twice in the past month. Their vendor reporting parser was producing inconsistent metrics. And their single sign-on module, the one Brightspire assured them was fully modernized, still directed password resets to an abandoned mailbox. Marin knew these issues intimately because she had patched each of them during her time at Brightspire, receiving no credit beyond a half-hearted thumbs up from Lionel. Ezra leaned in with the seriousness of someone welcoming a surgeon to a field hospital. Meridian Core did not want a consultant. They wanted a fixer, a cleaner, someone who could see through Brightspire's technical negligence and reconstruct order from chaos. When she left their building, Ezra handed her a sealed packet. "No expectation," he said, "just an offer to consider. Better pay, better title, greater authority, and one intriguing detail." They wanted her help preparing for their audit of Brightspire. As Marin walked home, cold wind pressed against her coat, but her smile was warm, subtle, and dangerous. She did not rage at Sylvia's dismissal. She did not crumble under Lionel's ignorance. She simply sharpened her resolve. From that point on, her nightly ritual transformed. She applied selectively to positions at companies harmed by Brightspire's sloppy systems. Her applications were strategic, surgical. She was not seeking escape, she was seeking leverage. 48 hours later, she received an email with the subject line, Enclave Dynamics Audit Preparation Inquiry. The sender was Rowan Trask, Director of Infrastructure for one of Brightspire's largest long-term partners. He referenced a credential conflict Marin had discovered nearly a year earlier, misfiled by Brightspire's support team as an external error. It was Marin's signature in the logs that revealed the truth. "I believe you are the individual responsible for the resolution," Rowan wrote. "May we discuss your insights?" Marin agreed to meet. She took another quiet day off. Lionel barely noticed that either. At Enclave Dynamics, she was treated not as a junior analyst, but as someone whose knowledge held genuine weight. Their system had been limping along for years, dragged down by Brightspire's outdated modules. Rowan asked if she would consider helping with a broader systems review. They sought clarity. They sought structure. They sought her. By the time she returned to her apartment, a new message waited. A formal offer, great salary, strategic role, full authority, and one final clause. They wanted her guidance during Brightspire's upcoming vendor audit. Marin hovered over the attachment. This was not just an escape plan. It was a staircase built from the bones of every dismissed concern she had ever raised. She downloaded the file. Marin entered a double life. During her Brightspire hours, she was the same quiet, diligent presence who recalibrated dashboards and corrected mislabeled data fields. Nobody suspected anything unusual because nobody had ever bothered to look closely at her before. But once she clocked out, the transformation began. Marin became a digital surgeon, slicing through aging infrastructure for Enclave Dynamics. She reconstructed missing logs, stabilized credential sequences, and diagrammed integration flows that had not been documented since Brightspire's founding. Rowan frequently remarked that she possessed an uncanny ability to identify problems before they manifested. Marin bit back a smile each time. She identified them because she had patched them repeatedly at Brightspire, only to watch the company plaster over her efforts with new jargon and a prayer. Soon, Enclave Dynamics trusted her enough to grant sandbox access. She examined decades of vendor neglect that traced directly back to Brightspire's leadership. She mapped failure points, built forecasts, and proposed corrective measures that her new colleagues received with visible relief, as though she had delivered potable water to a desert. Meanwhile, Lionel at Brightspire continued assigning her refactoring tasks without acknowledging her previous fixes. During one team sync, he proudly presented a workflow she had personally designed 2 months earlier, unaware he was parroting her own words. She saved her resignation letter in a folder labeled Seasonal Notes. All it needed was a date. Then came the moment of escalation. Enclave Dynamics invited her to a leadership review. Rowan introduced her to the Vice President of Operations, a sharp woman named Talia Reeves, who looked at Marin like she was inspecting a precision instrument. Talia presented a simple question. What would happen if you led the audit instead of merely supporting it? Silence settled across the room, as though the walls waited for her answer. Talia clarified. Enclave Dynamics did not merely want an auditor. They wanted a chief architect to design a long-term remediation strategy. Someone who understood the failures deeply enough to rebuild the system from the foundation up. Someone trustworthy. Someone proven. Someone like Marin. The offer that followed doubled her Brightspire salary. It granted her full authority over technical review and vendor compliance. It positioned her as the person Brightspire would have to answer to during the audit. Marin did not accept immediately. Revenge requires timing, not haste. She waited for the perfect alignment of calendar and consequence. On a Wednesday morning, she submitted her resignation through the Brightspire HR portal, which crashed twice before the system finally processed it. Sylvia did not schedule an exit interview. Lionel did not ask where she was going. He simply sent her a thumbs-up emoji, followed by a request to finalize a report she no longer had access to. She cleaned her desk in silence. A cracked mug, a notebook filled with half-deciphered solutions, a pen that barely worked but symbolized persistence. Before she left, she opened her planner and marked a date 2 weeks ahead. Audit Day. She walked out of Brightspire with a lightness she had not felt in years. The next time she would enter that building, it would not be as an overlooked junior analyst. It would be as the storm they had unknowingly invited. Marin arrived at Brightspire on Audit Day, wearing a navy blazer that fit her like a declaration. Her guest badge displayed the logo of Enclave Dynamics, and her laptop bag carried documentation sharp enough to cut careers. The moment she stepped off the elevator, whispers spread through the corridor. Former colleagues stared as though witnessing a spirit that had decided haunting was too subtle. Sylvia from Employee Relations froze mid-sip of her herbal infusion. Her eyes widened when she saw the title printed beneath Marin's name. Lead Systems Auditor and Compliance Liaison. "Welcome back," Sylvia managed. "Thank you," Marin replied. "I am here to conduct the vendor audit." That was when Sylvia's smile fractured like brittle porcelain. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere thickened with discomfort. Gregor Vale, the vice president who once told Marin she needed to demonstrate more maturity before taking on key responsibilities, spilled his coffee at the sight of her badge. A dark stain spread across outdated charts that he had not revised in 6 months. "Did not expect to see you here," he said, attempting a laugh. "I will be leading this audit," Marin answered, sliding into the seat at the head of the table. "We will begin with a retroactive review of 12 months of system activity." Dead silence swept the room. Over the next 3 days, Marin unfolded a series of findings that left Brightspire's leadership pale and quiet. She revealed expired certificates, unsecured credential sheets, undocumented hotfixes, and a permissions hierarchy so tangled it looked like a cat had played with an encryption algorithm. Her favorite reveal, however, was a shared password repository titled Vendor Access Master, Final V7, real.xlsx, sitting unsecured in SharePoint. It had been accessed from 3 external IP addresses in states where Brightspire had no legal presence. Sylvia attempted to claim ignorance. Lionel tried to blame legacy staff. Gregor suggested a junior analyst had maintained the file. Marin smiled coolly. "I believe the junior analyst was me." No one spoke after that. By the end of day 3, Enclave Dynamics issued a temporary suspension of Brightspire's contract pending further investigation. Payments halted. Access froze. Panic blossomed. Brightspire engineers began emailing Marin privately. They asked for advice. They asked if she was hiring. They asked if she remembered them. She did not answer immediately. Power tasted better when savored. That night, Rowan messaged her. "Excellent work. Continue. We are almost ready for the final transition." Marin closed her laptop with deliberate calm. She was not finished. Brightspire had only begun to understand the cost of ignoring the one person who had kept their digital skeleton from collapsing. And soon, they would pay that cost in full. The downfall arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning without a dramatic speech or a flashing alert. A single email struck Brightspire with the subtlety of a falling anvil. Subject: Termination of vendor agreement due to non-compliance and security risk. Enclave Dynamics formally severed Brightspire's contract. Effective immediately. No negotiation. No appeal. The reaction was instant. Lionel updated his professional profile with vague references to new horizons. Gregor posted an inspirational quote about resilience. Sylvia updated nothing at all. She was too busy being escorted to a mandatory meeting in Conference Room B, a room now controlled by Marin. Enclave Dynamics did not merely replace Brightspire. They absorbed the contract and expanded it, forming a new internal branch dedicated to system integrity. Rowan appointed Marin as Director of Systems Architecture and Oversight, with authority over procurement, compliance, integration, and strategy. Her new office overlooked the city. Her new badge opened every door. Her new team consisted of carefully selected individuals who valued competence over hierarchy. Conference Room B felt different now. Not smaller, but humbler. It was the same room where Sylvia had once dismissed Marin with a patronizing tilt of the head. Now it held the power reversal Marin had earned. As Sylvia entered, she looked around as though expecting someone else to explain the situation. The Enclave liaison gestured for her to sit. Marin did not rise. She simply opened a folder labeled Personnel Compliance Review. Your performance has been assessed as part of the transition, Marin said. There are multiple areas requiring corrective action. She slid the document forward, one page marked with Sylvia's name. Trembling fingers lifted the paper. We negotiate now, Marin continued, voice calm and razor-sharp. But not with individuals who undervalue the people who hold their systems together. Sylvia swallowed hard. Marin closed the folder, signaling the end of the conversation. Outside the conference room, her new team waited. They respected her not because they were told to, but because her work had saved them from systemic disaster. She guided them through clear strategies, documented processes, and an infrastructure plan built on transparency rather than panic. As the meeting adjourned, Rowan approached with a satisfied nod. The transition is complete. Well done, Marin. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her journey settle into something steady and earned. She had walked into Brightspire as an underestimated junior analyst. She had returned as a reckoning. And she left that room knowing one simple truth. Revenge did not require rage. It required precision. Thank you for reading, devoted office survivors. Your support keeps these stories alive. Unless you are Lionel, in which case you will need more than support. You will need luck.